A journey from the past to the present. Reading Buzz.
And further, there had been a great cleansing of the world from noxious insects, from weeds and vermin and hostile beasts. The mosquito had gone, the housefly, the blowfly, and indeed a great multitude of flies had gone. They had been driven out of life by campaigns involving an immense effort and extending over many generations. The attack upon the flies had involved the virtual rebuilding of a large proportion of utopian houses and a minute cleansing of them all throughout the planet. And even when the verdict was death final and complete, Utopia set about the business of extermination with great caution. A reserve would be kept, and was in many cases still being kept, in some secure isolation of every species condemned. There had been much befriending and taming of big animals. The larger carnivora, combed and cleaned, were reduced to a milk dietary. This had reduced them in spirit and altogether decatted them, making them into pets and ornaments in Utopia. The almost extinct elephant had increased again, and Utopia had saved her giraffes. The brown bear had always been disposed to sweets and vegetarianism and had greatly improved in intelligence. The dog had given up barking and was comparatively rare. As he, Barnstaple, heard all this, it seemed to him to be the most natural and necessary phase in human history. The Utopians told of eugenic beginnings, of a new and surer decision in the choice of parents, of an increasing certainty in the science of heredity. And as Mr. Barnstaple contrasted the firm, clear beauty of face and limb that every Utopian displayed with the carelessly assembled features and bodily disproportions of his earthly beings, he realized that already these Utopians were passing beyond man towards a nobler humanity. They were becoming different in kind.
How do you manage about newspapers and criticism?
Said Mr. Barnstaple. Crystal, a spokesperson from Utopia, explained that there was a complete distinction between news and discussion in Utopia. There were houses, one was in sight, which were used as reading rooms. One went to these places to learn the news. Thither went the reports of all the things that were happening on the planet, things found, things discovered, things done. For some time, Crystal said, the reports had been very full and amusing about the Earthlings. Crystal promised to take Mr. Barnstaple to a news place and entertain him by reading him some of the utopian descriptions of earthly life, which had been derived from the Earthlings. Utopian news lacked, of course, the high spice of an earthly newspaper, the intriguing murders and amusing misbehaviors, the entertaining and exciting cases and detected swindles, the great processional movements of royalty across the general traffic, and the romantic fluctuations of the stock exchange and sport. Any Utopian was free to criticize and discuss anything in the whole universe, provided he told no lies about it, directly or indirectly. He could be as respectful or disrespectful as he pleased. He could propose anything, however subversive. He could break into poetry or fiction as he chose. Only, he must refrain from lying. He could get what he had to say printed and distributed to the newsrooms. There it was read or neglected as the visitors chanced to approve of it or not. The librarians noted what books and papers were read and taken away, and these they replaced with fresh copies. The piles that went unread were presently reduced to 1 or 2 copies, and the rest went back to the pulping mills. But many of the poets and philosophers and storytellers whose imaginations found no wide popularity were nevertheless treasured.
I am not at all clear in my mind about one thing,
said Mr. Barnstaple.
I have seen no coins and nothing like money passing in this world.
In Utopia, just as upon earth, he explained, money came as a great discovery. Hitherto, before the invention of money, all service between man and man had been done through bondage or barter. Life was a thing of slavery and narrow choice, but money opened up the possibility of giving a worker a free choice in his reward. It took Utopia 3,000 years and more to realize that possibility. The idea of money abounded in pitfalls and was easily corruptible. Utopia once carried, as Earth carries now, a load of speculators, gamblers, and bargain, pressing Shylocks, exacting every conceivable advantage out of the weaknesses of money. Everybody went about the world with pockets full of small coins, paying on every slight occasion. Then, as economic science became more stable and exact, people were able to buy passes that carried them by all the available means of transport for a year, or for 10 years, or for life. The state learned from clubs and hotels to provide matches, newspapers, stationery, and transport for a fixed annual charge. The same inclusive system spread from small and incidental things to great and essential matters, to housing and food and even clothing.
Something of this sort is going on Earth even now,
said Mr. Barnstaple.
We use money in the last resort, but a vast volume of our business is already a matter of bookkeeping.
Centuries of unity and energy had given Utopia very complete control of many fountains of natural energy upon the planet. And this was the heritage of every child born therein. He was credited at his birth with a sum sufficient to educate and maintain him up to 4 or 5 and 20, and then he was expected to choose some occupation to replenish his account.
I begin to apprehend the daily life of this world,
said Mr. Barnstaple.
It is a life of demigods.
A new and astounding phase has begun for life here. We learnt long ago the chief secrets of happiness upon this planet,
said Crystal. He leant over his papers towards Mr. Barnstaple and held up a finger and spoke audible words as if to make his meaning plainer. It seemed to Mr. Barnstaple that each word translated itself into English as he spoke it.
The collision of our planet Utopia with your planet Earth was a very curious accident, but an unimportant accident. Your universe and ours are two out of a great number of gravitation-time universes. They are similar throughout, but they are identical in nothing. Your planet and ours happen to be side by side, so to speak, but they are not traveling at exactly the same pace, nor in a strictly parallel direction. They will drift apart again and follow their several destinies. You fell into us as amazingly for us as for you. We do not want to come into your universe, nor have more of your world come into ours. You are too like us. And you are too dark and troubled and diseased. You are too contagious, and we cannot help you yet, because we are not gods but men. Mr. Barnstaple nodded. What could utopians do with the men of Earth? We must leave you alone. We cannot trust ourselves with you. Believe me, this is the only reasonable course for us. Mr. Barnstaple assented silently. You and I, two individuals, can be friends and understand. What you say is true, said Mr. Barnstaple. It is true, but it grieves me. It is true, greatly. Nevertheless, I gather I at least may be of service in Utopia. You can.
How? By returning to your own world. Mr. Barnstaple thought for some moments. It was what he had feared, but he had offered himself. I will do that.
We want to verify all the data we have of the relations of our universe to yours. We want to see if we can return a living being to your world. We are almost certain now that we can do so. And that human being must care for us enough and care for his own world enough to go back and give us a sign that he has got there. Mr. Barnstaple spoke huskily. I can do that, he said. We can put you into that machine of yours and into the clothes you wore. You can be made again exactly as you left your world. Exactly, I understand. And because your world has some strangely able brains in it, here and there, we do not want your people to know of us, living so close to you, led by some poor silly genius of a scientific man, coming there greedy, foolish, breeding swarms, hammering at our doors, threatening our lives. Yes, said Mr. Barnstaple. Before men can come to Utopia, they must learn the way here. Utopia, I see, is only a home for those who have learnt the way. He paused and answered some of his own thoughts. When I have returned, he said, the nostalgia of Utopia will distress me.
His eyes returned to the landscape below. The car was standing in a field from which the hay had recently been carried. He was tilted on one side because of a roll in the ground. A hedge in which there was an open black gate separated his hayfield from the high road. Close at hand was a board advertisement of some Maidenhead Hotel. He sat still for some moments, mentally rehearsing what he had to do. Then he started the yellow peril again and drove it close up to the black gate.